These my dollars make it hurt.
Welcome in to the Deep Cover Podcast. We are back. Coming off of a disappointing Ravens loss to the Bengals up there in Cincinnati. But hey, our heads are still high. We're still looking forward. 2 games left in this season. Got the Rams coming into town this weekend. So, like John Harbaugh always likes to say, we don't blink. They don't blink. Ravens don't blink. We don't blink on the Deep Cover Podcast. So our spirits are still high. We're still optimistic. And we're going to get into all of that in a few minutes here. But before we do, let me touch base with the fellas as usual. It's good to see both of you guys, Carey and Chris. I'll start with you, Carey. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Like you said, 2 games left. Playoffs still, on the table. So, we got a lot to get to today. So I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. You play to win the game. Hello. So all of this talk about resting this person, shutting that person down, you play to win the game. Until there are no more games to play, that is what you do. I know, Chris, you feel that way. How you been, man?
Yeah, I'm feeling good either way. Whether they win and go to the playoffs, that's fine with me. Whether they lose and get the 10th pick, that's fine with me too. So I'm just chilling. I'm chilling. I'm enjoying the ride. Wherever the team goes, that's I'm happy. I'll be happy with whatever outcome it is.
But when you love the draft the way that you do, and Carey too, the way both of you guys love the draft, you really aren't going to be unhappy either way, like you said. I mean, obviously you want the season to continue and them to have a chance, getting the playoffs because you never know. But if it doesn't work that way, then you've already started your draft prep, but then it goes into like full gear at that point, and that's like a season onto itself. Like draft season is just, it's its whole other thing just into itself, which is exciting because it's the unknown. You're looking at all these prospects and evaluating guys, getting to know a little bit about their backgrounds, and that part of it is exciting too. But we ain't there yet, so we're not gonna call that like it's already happened. We decided before we started recording that we don't really need to say nothing about the Bengals game. Everybody knows what happened up there in Cincinnati. All the guys elevated off the practice squad, guys getting hurt in the game. Joe Burrow doing what he did, saying what he said. Hey, tip the cap. They did what they were supposed to do, right? So we give them that and we move on. But focusing back on the Ravens, positive news: Patrick Mekari, friend of the show. Never been on the show, but we would love to have you on the show, man. You would like to come on. Hey, you just let us know. We'll make ourselves better.
Hey, I'm willing to say I doubt there was any podcast that was banging the table for him the way the Deep Cover Podcast was.
Especially you. I mean, you leading the bandwagon for that. You saw the potential and what he could do, and then obviously he's been putting it on display. It was 2019 when he had to come in and play center. Times where he's had to play guard, and then this year sliding out to right tackle, and before he started dealing with a couple of injuries, I'd argue he's playing right tackle as well as anybody out there. He had a stretch earlier where he was rolling. So he gets a contract extension. I don't have the specifics in front of me. It's a 3-year deal. Either one of you guys got the number?
I think it's a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
I know it puts him at like about mid-tier as far as what right tackles make. I think it was Jesse Davis and Marcus Cannon. I think it puts him right in between them as far as what the kind of money he'll be making. So like Mike said, the way he was playing, he was definitely playing better than Marcus Cannon and Jesse Davis. That's for sure. So the fact that he's going to be sandwiched in between them as far as annual salary is concerned, that's a huge win for the team because he's for sure worth way more than that. And that's not even taking into account the versatility that he has to play all 5 positions on the line. That's just talking about him as a right tackle. So I feel like it was a great deal for the team.
Totally agree. And I know, Carey, you're somebody who puts a lot of stock and a lot of value in versatility. And like Chris just said, he literally he not this is not figuratively. We're not saying he could play all five positions on the line. He has played
Right. He's literally done
offensive line. Just your thoughts on the deal and the value of that kind of flexibility with a player.
Yeah, I thought it was a great deal. I figured at the very least they would tender him and have him back for the next year, but them to have the foresight to kind of jump out ahead of things and recognizing that run he had at right tackle to begin the season. Like you said, he was going up against some big dogs. That Kansas City game, Chris Jones, blocking guys like that and holding up well. So it's funny when you look at tackle and the criticism that has come with tackle this year. And part of it is rightfully so. But now when you kind of fast forward to 2022, you got Ronnie coming back, hopefully. You got Mekari kind of locked in now. You got this David Sharp guy who is kind of intriguing, and maybe they can bring him back on the cheap. You got Juwan James, who should be healthy and ready to go. So all of a sudden, man, a tackle position that looked shaky, in 2021 could all of a sudden be strong in 2022. And then I can't go without shouting out Chris, because Chris had this way back when we were doing 53-man roster show. And I think I had Mekari on roster as a backup center. And Chris had looked like he was kind of going short on the offensive line as far as tackles, but he had Mekari as a tackle way back before the season even started. And something he said kind of stuck out to me is he says, regardless of where he plays at, he moves like a tackle. And so I went back and kind of looked at it, and I looked at the fluidity and just some of the things that he does. And he moves like a tackle. Like, he can play these other spots, but I think that right tackle spot is the highest upside position for him. So for them to lock that in and, like you say, slot him in at a mid-tier salary for right tackles, man, that's a huge win for the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, Chris called it way back then. We were late to the party, but he brought us along. He drug us along. we finally started to see what he saw all along. And I think, you also, I know this isn't, necessarily a popular opinion, but I think it also gives you a little bit of a hedge, a little bit of insurance on what's going to happen with Bradley Bozeman. Again, I agree with Chris and you that, Mekari does look very comfortable out there at tackle, and, you probably like to continue to give him that opportunity out there. But in the event that the market, sort of prices Bozeman out of what the Ravens want to play, at least you have a guy who has started games at center for you if you need that. That's not to say that you wouldn't go out and try to acquire another center either through free agency and or the draft or trade, however you go about that. But we know how the free agency market can be. And, you can just look back at the last couple of deals just for centers. You can look at Frank Ragnow. I'm not saying that it would necessarily be that kind of deal for Bradley Bozeman. I mean, Ragnow was a first-round pick. I think he was like top 20 or something like that. So, different kind of player. But you could even look at Corey Linsley out of the Chargers, and that was a pretty good-sized deal. I think he had like 17 mil guaranteed, and he was a fifth-round pick. So it just depends, and nothing against Bradley Bozeman, because, Chris, you made a point earlier in the week that he seems like the kind of guy where, yeah, obviously money matters to these guys, but he also is the kind of guy who wants to be in the right kind of environment for him and his family. And he seems pretty comfortable and invested in the community here in the Baltimore area. So, he could be one of those guys who are maybe willing to kind of shuffle things around a little bit in terms of contract structure to remain in a place where he's comfortable. But he also, you don't get these opportunities. We talked about him being in the same O-line room as Ronnie Stanley, and looking at what happened to Ronnie in terms of getting his deal and then, having that injury and then, kind of still struggling with it a year later. So maybe, Bozeman sees that and is like, man, I better go get this bag because you never know when things can take a turn. So I think that's probably a secondary kind of way to look at this. Maybe even a third way, might be even further down the list than second. But congrats to Patrick Mekari, man. Guys earned it. Come in here as an undrafted guy. And Harb said it at his press conference today. He's like, look, if you're a young player coming into the league, regardless of your status, undrafted, drafted, whatever, look at what Patrick Mekari did, because he said he did everything perfectly. Like everything that you're supposed to do as a young player coming in, he said he did it perfectly. So if you're a young guy, look at him, do what he did, and you'll have an opportunity to make a roster and get some playing time. So he seems like such a
also
when you listen to him.
Let this be a lesson for arm length too. Arm length is not everything when it comes to playing tackle. It's not everything.
Knew it was coming. No, it's like any other tool. It depends on how you use it. Arm length can be an asset. It's a tool. It can be an asset. But if you don't necessarily have the prototypical arm length, it doesn't mean that you can't be successful playing tackle. You're just going to do it in a different way than maybe the guys that have those 35, 36-inch arms. And we've seen the flip side. We've seen guys with those kinds of arms not play as well, that kind of arm length. So yeah, it's a tool, and it all comes down to how you use it. And every player is unique. There's a guy on Twitter, I forget his handle now. I want to give him credit, but he always says every player is one of one. Stop comparing these guys, right? Every player is one-on-one, and they have their own unique individual way of accomplishing, whatever they're asked to do. So Patrick Mekari, testament to that. Because you look at him, you'd say, this guy doesn't look like prototypical tackle. But you watch him play, and he's out there doing more than holding his own. Carey mentioned going up against Chris Jones. He went up against Joey Bosa. I mean, he had a couple dudes that he was rolling through there before he got injured, and was really playing well against those guys. So good for him.
This week he'll be going up against a couple other notable guys.
Oh yeah,
Miller, Leonard Floyd. We're gonna get into the Rams preview in a minute here. I'm getting nervous thinking about it. I'm thinking about that Aaron Donald interview. He was doing his presser this week, and he was talking about the game back in 2019 and how he really didn't kind of play up to his standard. And he said, "Yeah, that's been in the back of my mind for sure." I'm like, "Oh no!" He's already one of the best we've ever seen at defensive tackle. Maybe anywhere on the defensive line. And if he's got a chip on his shoulder coming in, it does not look good for my man Ben Cleveland. But anyway, before we get into that, we kind of touched on this a little bit with the, you play to win the game, but Ravens playoff chances, not dead, despite losing that game to the Bengals and not being able to take over first place in the division. And I think currently on the outside looking in, because Miami beat the Saints in that, was it a Monday night game? I don't remember if it was Sunday night or Monday night at this point.
Monday night.
Thank you. So I think the Ravens, as a result of that, are kind of on the outside looking in right now. But with these two games to go, and there's a lot of sort of things to be decided in the AFC, not just in the North. Obviously, the teams are all kind of bunched together in the division, but throughout the rest of the AFC, only Kansas City, I think, has locked up their division in the AFC. NFC is a little more solidified, but AFC, man, there's a lot of different things that can go on these last 2 weeks. So, Chris, I'll kick it out with you. What do you think, man, about their chances? You feeling optimistic about it?
I wouldn't say optimistic. I don't think that they're completely dead, because just the way this season has gone, not only for the Ravens, but for the whole league, it's truly been any given Sunday. And I mean, we saw the Bills lose to the Jaguars not too long ago. So I'm not counting the team out yet. Would I bet money on it? I would not. but I'm not writing them off. I'm not going to be so quick to write them off because so much can happen and there's still COVID. So, key players can be lost within, a day, that you wake up and the morning of and your QB could be, on the COVID list. So I'm definitely not writing them off. And, I just want to see them compete the way that they've been competing this whole year because that's the main thing. It's one thing if you lose and the team just quits, but this team has not quit outside of probably that first Bengals game where it looked like they gave up a bit. But even this last game, they were still fighting and clawing to the end. So I just want to see this team compete and really close out this season strong.
Yeah, I think we've seen that consistently. Like you said, there's maybe one game I can't even, despite the score in this last Bengals game, I can't even say that, that was like a we checked out, gone fishing situation. They were so undermanned that there just wasn't much that this is what it was a knife to a gunfight kind of situation, particularly in the secondary. So outside of that first Bengals game, I totally agree with you. That's one thing that we've seen consistently, no matter who's been out there. They fight, they claw, they scrap, they battle. A lot of these games have come down. You can say come down to the end, but like literally the end, the last play of the game, has come down to whether they were going to win or lose. And they tried to win. They always try to win. They're not just going to say, well, let's try to tie the game and see where we go. They've consistently tried to win these games when they had control, when they had the ball. That's a whole nother topic. But anyway, Carey, let me go over to you. How do you feel about the playoff chances? Remember, like Jim Harbaugh dad said, if you won't always feel enthusiastic, but if you act enthusiastic, eventually you will be enthusiastic. So how do you feel about the playoff? Now, I'm giving you that pep talk. How do you feel about their chances?
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere where Chris is. The thing I like about this team is one that they just compete and they don't make any excuses for any injury, COVID, whatever the case may be. You never see these guys even mention it. They just come out and compete. You saw third, fourth quarter of this Bengals game, they're down big. You still see guys coming through with effort. Tony Jefferson just got back on the squad. He's getting in there, making big time stops, doing these things. So there's that element. And then there's the element of throughout all of this, you still see glimpses of greatness in different elements of this team, whether it be the growth of the wide receivers, whether it be even though they're banged up, the offensive line is battling through, what they've had to go through and are showing up and protecting the quarterback better. Things like that, they just bode so well for 2022. And I don't want to just get out of the whole 2021 is dead kind of mindset, but it's just a lot to look forward to. But at the same time, they have a chance here, and if they can get 8 back, and if 8 has sat down and kind of learned during his time away from the field some of the things that he needs to kind of have some come to Jesus moments about as far as his decision making and some of those things. He's got the talent to put a team on his back and make a run. And so I think that being in the back of my mind is probably the most exciting thing. How magical would it be if he comes back and, like I said, he makes some of those adjustments and, he just kind of lets his talent shine through. And, this team, say what you want, this is a resilient team. If they can get enough back, from COVID injuries, things of that nature, you give them a puncher's chance with just about anybody. That's the one thing I kind of think about is if they can get Lamar back, and get into the dance, man, anything can happen.
I think that's why I am optimistic about it. And maybe that's a more accurate way for me to say it is I'm optimistic about Lamar and what is possible when he's in the game. Now, look, I should probably qualify myself because, it's not looking likely that he's going to play this Sunday. Of course, John Harbaugh says, it's still a possibility, but we all saw the video from the Wednesday practice. Did not look great in terms of him, his movement. And then he didn't practice Thursday. And I think they had a morning practice today. I don't think he practiced this morning. So it's not looking great, but you never know. And so, I definitely have seen that sentiment out on Twitter among certain people that, hey, maybe he doesn't come back this year at all. I don't know. But if he does, like you said, if they can find a way to get in the dance, he's the kind of guy that can make magic happen. We've seen it ever since he first, became the starting quarterback back in 2018. He can take things that don't look like they should happen and make them happen. So there's just something about him. Obviously, he has amazing talent, but there's something about his vibe, his energy when he's out there. Everybody believes that, man, we can do anything. We literally can come back from any amount. We can do anything when that guy is back there. And they even did some of that with Tyler Huntley. So, I mean, that's just kind of maybe the energy around this team too, but particularly when, Lamar is there. And shout out to Tony Jefferson. You mentioned it, man. It didn't matter what the score was for that guy. You could see he was so happy to be back out on the field and playing.
Yeah.
And just, look, the guy had a sack. He had a pass deflected. He had a special teams tackle. I mean, my man was just doing it all. And even in his presser, when people are trying to kind of, find negatives and like, oh, you've been in this league a long time. What do you think about throwing a 50-yard pass, late in the game when you're up big? He's like, hey, I think I had a chance to intercept it. That's what if they want to throw the ball, chance for us to pick it off and turn it over and give it back to our offense. So that guy's energy and his mindset, not that they don't have other guys on the team like that. I think Calais Campbell's a guy that's like that. They have other guys. Josh Bynes is like that. But, man, I like having his energy back on the team because he was like that when he was here the first time. And it's like maybe even at another level now because it's, the game was kind of taken away from him.
Yeah.
Energy for a while there. And you could see he was just happy to be out on that field and playing again. So shout out TJ, friend of the show as well. Of course, welcome. You and Patrick, both of y'all can come together, separate, however you want to do it. Let's transition to this Rams preview. We spoke about it a little bit earlier. Obviously, the Rams come in and they're rolling. They're 11-4. They're 6th in offense. They're 15th in defense. I think anybody who's a fan of the NFL, even if you're just a Ravens fan, you know what kind of season Cooper Kupp is having. This man got damn near 2,000 receiving yards, like 130 catches. I mean, he is just out there balling. And, that's not even mentioning Odell, who started to get acclimated and comfortable. And I think he's got like 4 touchdowns in the last 6 games for them. So he's starting to get comfortable out there. Matt Stafford, up and down at times, you know what I mean? Obviously still got one of the better arms in the league and can make all the throws still to this day, but he'll give you something too. He'll give you some chances. Sometimes the decision-making gets a little iffy there for him. Of course, they got the run game with a variety of dudes. Sony Michel, we might see Cam Akers in this game, which is crazy. Coming back from an ACL after 6 months, he might.
Achilles.
Excuse me, Achilles.
Even worse.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say thank you for correcting me. So that would be crazy. And then the defense, we touched on that earlier. Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, Jalen Ramsey. I mean, just dudes on top of dudes on both sides of the ball. So with all of that, Chris, are you feeling optimistic? I'm just kidding. But I will go to you first, Chris. Going into this game, what's the path to victory, right? That as you see, obviously there has to be one. You have to at least think that there is one, because if not, why else do you play the game? So what do you think the Ravens need to do to give themselves a shot in this one?
Okay, so there are a few things that are working in the Ravens' favor. First of all, they're coming from the West Coast, and the game got moved up to a 1:00 game. So historically speaking, that usually favors the East Coast team. Then also there's some rumblings about possible rain. That would also fall into the Ravens' favor, in my opinion. and what they want to do, because the Ravens, they're way more comfortable playing in those dirty games than the Rams are. Rams are, indoor team, very finesse, not much of a smash mouth team. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Carey, you might know, Darrell Henderson, he's not playing this game, right?
Yeah, he's out.
He's out this game.
Yeah.
So is Sony Michel's going to be their lead guy? And Sony Michel, he's had a nice little season, backing up Darrell Henderson, and even starting when Henderson's been down. But he's not the kind of back that really scares the Ravens defense. That kind of guy that could just pop one long run. I think the Ravens can contain him as far as the run game is concerned. Now, Mike, you mentioned it, obviously, Cooper Kupp having one of the best wide receiver seasons we've ever seen in the NFL. So obviously he's going to be a problem, but hopefully you have Chris Westry back. Hopefully you have Jimmy Smith back. Hopefully Tavon can play too. So, I mean, that sounds like an all-pro squad compared to what they had last week with playing against Cincinnati. So I will take that, and just hopefully they can take advantage of those weather factors, as far as it being a little colder, maybe the rain coming. Hopefully they could take advantage of those and really grind this clock out the way that we saw against the Packers, because what they did was they were like, all right, you got Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Devontae Adams. We're just going to keep away with you. And I feel like that's the path for victory, is just keeping that offense off of the field is your best defense, in my opinion.
Totally agree with that. If you can keep all of those dudes over there on the sideline watching, sipping on some Gatorade, you're feeling pretty good about your chances. Hopefully all those DBs can be back. I know they're off and activated off the COVID list. I don't think I saw anything with those guys not practicing this week. Maybe Tavon. I don't remember if he maybe was limited or just straight up DNP'd. But I don't think I remember seeing anything about Jimmy or Chris Westry. I remember talking to my dad about the guys last week. He was like, "Who are these guys?" He's looking at the numbers. He's like, "Who are these guys?" And I'm telling him the names. He's like, "That sounds like a law firm, Worley Jackson and Seymour." I was like, "No, they are NFL quarterbacks." So it was a tough spot for those guys going up against the likes of Chase and Higgins and Boyd. And doesn't get any easier this week. Well, whoever is out there, we just talked about that. But you also mentioned that Green Bay game, and I think that's an interesting point too, because I don't know that they'll go to the same extreme that they did in terms of the coverage that they have for Devontae Adams with Cooper Kupp, even though, I mean, his numbers are even better than Devontae Adams, so maybe you do. But I think you'll definitely see some of that in the game plan in terms of the brackets and the doubles and the cones, whatever you want to call it. And I think it's a little bit, I got to be careful about this word because people are going to be like, easy. You think it's easy to guard Cooper Kupp? I'm not saying it's easy to guard Cooper Kupp. The mechanics of executing those double teams are a little easier when a guy lines up in the slot, just because of where he is. There are more bodies inside already on defense. And so just mechanically, it can be a little bit, I don't want to say easy, because it's not, because you still got to do it. It can be a little less cumbersome than when a guy lines out, outside the numbers, because there's so much more space out there. And so kind of creating those double teams, it's a little bit more difficult. So, I think that kind of maybe works in their favor a little bit. Not that Cooper Kupp is exclusively in the slot. He's not, but I think he runs like 60-something% of his routes out of the slot and has put up a bunch of numbers out of the slot. So, Carey, I'll kick it over to you. What do you see as kind of the path to a victory? How do the Ravens keep this one competitive and give themselves a shot?
Yeah, I say defensively, man, you kind of got to hope for one of those weird Stafford games. He's bound to have them. I believe he had one last week. You kind of got to, hope for that, try to do things early to try to break his rhythm. And, he's a rhythm guy. If you can knock him off kilter, you give yourself a chance of that staying that way for the entire game. what's so challenging about the Rams is how McVay moves these guys around and gets them so many free releases. So it seems like every play he's moving somebody around and creating those lanes. So it makes it harder to key in on guys, as opposed to, the situation like with Green Bay. Green Bay does move Devontae around, but he's kind of more stationary once he's where he is, as opposed to these Rams guys. So just something to watch for there. Offensively, I want to see what you guys think about this. Ramsey plays out of the slot. He's playing that star position for the Rams. I mean, with the rampage that Mark Andrews is on, wouldn't it make sense for them to just glue him to Mark Andrews, play in and play out? I would go into the game anticipating that would be the case. And so if that's the case, whoever's back there, whether it's Lamar, Huntley, just being mindful of that. Andrews has been on a rampage. Linebackers can't run what safeties can go over the top and keep him from getting the ball. But Ramsey is a different animal, man. He's one of those guys. I don't, from a fantasy standpoint, you don't get too much into the individual matchups with most guys, but Ramsey, Jair Alexander, they're of that select few guys that, if that guy is going to be on your guy, you're looking at things differently. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they approach that and, how they go about continuing to kind of construct this quick passing game, because, that man Aaron Donald is in there in 2.5 seconds. We need to be able to get that ball out, keep the chains moving. But like Chris said, man, some of the factors in this game leads you to think that we can see one of those kind of I had a boy that called them a drag them in the hole game, like get muddy, dirty, drag them in the hole, and let's see which team can claw their way out of the hole. This could line up and end up being one of those games. And if that's the case, I think the Ravens have shown over the years that they can win those kind of games more often than they can lose them. So it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, if we had to pick, which team is more comfortable winning ugly, I think we all would agree. Even just taking out being Ravens fans, taking that out of it, I think we all would agree that the Ravens, they have consistently found ways to win ugly this year and throughout their history.
Yeah.
That's kind of just consistently who they've been. So I'm with you on that. Let me kick that back though to Chris about Ramsey on Mark Andrews to get his thought. I have mine. I'm like, hell yeah, that's what I would do. But Chris, what would you do? I don't know the Rams scheme this year under Raheem Morris. I know it's probably a little bit different, or maybe a lot different than it was under Brandon Staley. I know with Brandon Staley, he didn't really do a lot of that in terms of matching up certain guys and following and shadowing guys, but I don't know if Raheem is maybe been doing more of that with Jalen, but even if he hasn't, I definitely would against Andrews. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. And something that I completely forgot about too is Hollywood hasn't been practicing either, because he's been down with a sickness, an illness. So there's a good chance that we might not have Hollywood suit up for this game. So I think, that makes a ton of sense to put Jalen on Andrews with the tear that Andrews has been on. He's clearly the biggest threat outside of Lamar when he's healthy that the Ravens have. So that makes complete sense to do that.
Yeah, that was my thought. I was thinking about Hollywood too, and like if he's not able to go, at least in terms of your passing game, I'm thinking, well, I got a dude, and I believe my dude can shut down your dude, and so I'm going to lock him up as much as I can all game long. And then these other guys, they're going to have to beat me. I know Rashad Bateman's a first-round pick, respect him, but he's going to have to beat me. Tylen Wallace, our guy, James Prochet, Devin Duvernay, if he can go, I don't think he's practiced again this week either with his ankle.
Yeah, I think he got one in.
He got one in? Okay.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
The ghost of Sammy Watkins, all those dudes, man. These dudes, they're going to have to – I love you, Sammy, man. You're also a friend of the show. My bad. I'm just from the Rams' perspective, the defensive perspective, I'm just saying that, look, these guys are going to have to beat me in the passing game because I'm not going to let Mark Andrews beat me. That's just not going to happen. So for me, it's like, and this is not new to Ravens fans. Obviously, on offense, they're going to want to run the ball, as best as they can, because we talked about all those guys, whether it's Ramsey, whether it's Aaron Donald, whether it's Von Miller, whether it's Leonard Ford. We mentioned all these guys. But I think if you can run the ball, you can kind of neutralize some of what those guys do best. I mean, they're pass rushers. I mean, AD can do a little bit of everything. As well as Vaughn too. But if you had to pick and say, well, what do you think is, if there is a weakness or an area where you say, hey, they're not as good at this thing as they are the other thing, to me, they're pass rushers first and foremost. And so if I can, keep them in situations where they're not rushing the passer as much, I probably like my chances a little bit better there. So you want to try to run the ball, I think, as much as you can. And then, obviously you're going to have to throw it sometime. So both you guys mentioned the quick passing game, and I think doing some things on first down, they've kind of done a little bit more this year in terms of the RPO game. I think we've seen them, kind of use some different elements of that throughout this year. I'd probably continue to roll some of that out on first down, and of course, AD inside is going to see all of the tricks, the whams, the traps, draws. He screens. You see all of that stuff inside. Just slow those guys down. So I think they'll have a good plan, because I think they generally have a good plan every week. For how they want to go into these games and what they want to try to do on offense and defense, and then it's just a matter of executing on the field in game. So, I like their chances just because I've seen it all year. Team fights. So I don't go into any game just because I'm a Ravens fan thinking, oh, they got a chance to beat anybody just because I'm biased. Yeah, I have that bias, but I also have seen there's evidence, that anybody, Ravens fan or not, can see that they compete in every game, unless it's the Bengals. So,
and also the O line, they've been playing pretty well together when you consider the patchwork that's been going on, and then the injury to Mekari when he came back, Mekari, I'm sorry, that he came back from. They've been performing a little bit better than they had as far as the midpoint part of the season was, where they were just all discombobulated.
They have been. And you've had to shift some different pieces in during that time as well. You got Ben Cleveland, who started the last two games. Looks like he's probably going to start this week too, because I don't think Power's got to practice in this week. Tyree Phillips is on IR. So he's not an option at this point. Obviously, best wishes out to him for a speedy recovery. A guy that I think we all like, because we see the talent, we see the ability, and he's just had a rough start in terms of injuries and being moved around, not really being able to kind of settle in at one spot and get a lot of experience there. So, speedy recovery out to Tyree. But yeah, you're right. This O-line, it has been playing back. I think a guy that really has caught my eye over the last couple is Kevin Zeitler. And I know I'd been a little critical of him earlier in the season, but I think he really has kind of, stepped it up a notch. For me, you look PFF and other places, they'll say he's been like that all season. Not gonna get into a PFF bashing situation here, but I think in particular he's really been playing well down the stretch here over the last few games. So it's going to be a challenge. Every week is a challenge, like John Harbaugh says. Every week is a challenge. But we talked about all the names on that Rams defense. So whatever the bigger, the more significant word for challenge is, that's what this week is going to be. I think before we close this show out, we wanted to go a little X-Files on you guys. Get our conspiracy theory hats on, because I think there's some stuff that's out there in the fan base, on the Twitter streets, when it comes to the Ravens coordinators. It used to just be G-Rowe. It was just the Greg Roman conspiracy, but now there might also be Wayne Martindale conspiracy theory going out there. It was hard enough to keep up with the Greg Roman conspiracy. He is somehow calling a different offense intentionally to hold Lamar back and depress his contract value. That's a pretty deep one, but it's out there. And then Wink, I shouldn't necessarily say it's a conspiracy. I think, Carey, you kind of framed it well earlier when you said, his aggressive style and nature had kind of always been praised by the fan base, but now it's seen as a negative. He's too aggressive, so maybe not a conspiracy with Wing, just, a little bit of the opinion shifting on him, right? In the opinion polls. Things are going the opposite way for Wick as of late. And of course, Giro, we know everything is his fault all the time. So, Carey, I'll start with you on this. The Ravens coordinators, are they embattled? What's the word that we should use here, or is this just fan base narrative street gone wild?
Yeah, it's tough to say, man. Embattled is a good word. It's one of those things I wonder how much of that is legitimate. I'll speak for Giro first. I'm not here to try to talk anybody into liking Giro or having issues with them or whatever the case may be. I think some of the struggles that they had before Lamar went out are warranted to have questions. I think even when they produced at times, you've seen kind of peaks and valleys in the consistency of the offense, drive in and drive out. And I think those are, legitimate gripes. But all I'm saying is, if we're going to call it on one side, you have to call it on the other side. He's had productive games with Huntley. He's had productive game with Josh Johnson last week. I mean, offensively, they did enough to win a football game last week. It just so happens that you come in with the deepest cornerback group in all of the NFL, and like literally all those guys are gone by last week. So, the talent disparity was just so much that it's too much for anybody to ask for. But offensively, don't get it twisted. They did enough to win an NFL game last week, and all of those things, the growth of a Prochet, of a Tylan Wallace, of Bateman coming back. All of these things we see, Devontae Freeman, the shift that happened in his season, all these things, Chris just talked about it, and you just talked about it, Mike, the stabilizing of the offensive line, a patchwork offensive line at that. All these things, Ravens fans and everybody can see them with their own eyes, but we don't give Greg Roman any credit for any of it. And it's not just magic beans or, stuff that's, happening. This is, you see the adjustments being made that are leading to more success in all these different avenues. So my thing is, whatever, regardless of what you think of him, people have yet to kind of give me another offensive coordinator recommendation. I think Chris asked for one too and didn't get anything. My thing on that front is, yeah, criticize him when it's warranted, but also give him his credit when it's due, man. This team has made a lot of strides and a lot of things that you can kind of look forward to, as far as 2022 and going forward, as far as him as the coordinator. I don't think, me personally, I made a final declaration on whether I think that, I'm banging the table for him to be the OC in 2022. But I also don't have an issue with it if he is. I think he's done a lot of good things, even though there's, obviously questions out there. And then my thing with Wink is, we just met those corners on Sunday. Yeah. So, I mean, what are we supposed to do? You can say, Burrow is so good against man coverage. Why didn't you play more zone? Again, these guys just got there. He's the guy that has to look at these guys all week and kind of formulate what they can and can't handle. Obviously, he put a game plan in place that he felt like would work to the best of the ability of the team with what he had at the time. And it didn't work. And it didn't work because the talent disparity was so high. But I think Wink has shown enough over his years as the coordinator to be given a little bit more a leeway than I think he's getting, within the fan base. Now, are there times where, there's a blitz call or something that maybe teeters on a little bit too much? Sure, but no coordinator is going to be perfect. Every coordinator you look at, they're going to look back at their play sheet at the end of the day, and it's probably going to be some calls they want back. But I'm not in a rush to run a guy out of the door that's had the kind of success he's had over the years with his team.
And you can see the impact of that talent disparity. That's just to touch on that game a little bit, the defensive side of it. He did all those things. That's the thing. It's not like, people were saying, well, why don't you try this? Or why didn't he do this? Or why didn't he do that? He tried them all. He played zone, Joe Burrow diced it up. He played man, Joe Burrow diced it up. He brought pressure, Joe Burrow diced it up. I mean, he literally tried to do everything that he could in terms of answers to say, okay, well, this isn't working. Let's try that. Okay, that's not working. Let's try this next thing. And it just didn't matter. And sometimes when the talent disparity is as significant as it was, that's what happens. It doesn't matter what you call. It's just going to be difficult to stop a guy who is in the zone in the way that he was with those receivers and Joe Mixon. It just is what it is. Chris, before I kick it over to you, just quick, we got a little injury report update here from the Ravens. So some things that I think that we thought were going to happen, they kind of just confirmed. Ben Powers is out. We talked about that. Anthony Averett is out. We did not talk about that, but he had missed practice all week, and he's confirmed out. And Odafe Owe is doubtful. He didn't practice this week either. Everybody else is listed as questionable. So, for the people who weren't out just because of rest, like Calais was out for rest. I think Levine, he had a knee, but I think it's kind of rest related too. And Latavius Murray. So some of those guys, they don't give them a status because they weren't technically on the injury report for an injury. But Hollywood questionable, Lamar questionable. Of course, we're going to leave all that stuff up in the air. But now let me switch it over to you, Chris, back on this question with the coordinators. I agree with Carey on Giro. I mean, I think if you look at the last couple of games, it'd be hard to say that, that he hasn't done what he can do from a play caller standpoint. He can't go out there and play the game, but what he can do from a play caller standpoint to give Huntley, to give Josh Johnson an opportunity to be successful. And, we talked about Mark Andrews. He's been on tear all year, but particularly these last 3 games, man, it's got like almost 400 yards, 5 TDs. I forget how many catches. And people will talk about game script. Yeah, they were down, so they got to throw a little bit more. So, of course, you're going to put up numbers. But you made the point to me earlier, like, okay, yeah, game script, that's a factor, but you still got to make those plays. Just because you're down and you have to throw the ball doesn't mean that you're going to complete passes. You can still throw incompletes. You can still throw interceptions. And they really, by and large, haven't done that. I know Josh Johnson threw one late in the Bengals game, but other than that, they really hadn't done that. So to me, I'm looking at Giro like, if anything, this might actually help his case with Lamar being out. And for Wink, I've never had a problem with the aggressiveness. Each year, people talk about, hey, maybe he needs to dial the blitzes back a little bit more and go with more 4-man rushes. And each year, I'm like, you know what, blitz more. Blitz more. But that's just my own personal thing. I'm a big fan of all of that. But let me get your thoughts, Chris. What do you think? We run these guys up out of here, or is it a little overblown?
No, I mean, just this fan base, they just, no matter what Giro does, they're gonna hate him. So he's never gonna get the credit that he deserves. No matter what kind of success it is, it's always gonna be because of Lamar. It's gonna be, or some other factor, like now. There's, like you said, Mike, there's a conspiracy that he's calling a completely different offense for Tyler Huntley and Josh Johnson than he is for Lamar. But what those people don't take into account is, one, you're calling plays for a generational QB. Like, that's what it is. He's a generational QB. So, of course, you're going to mix in some deeper shots when you have Lamar back there. And that's just how Lamar is. That's been one of the knocks on him this year, is that he's been trying to play too much hero ball and trying to hold out for the long pass, for the deep shots, instead of just taking what the defense gives to him. But that's just who Lamar is. And does it always work? No, but he's a 24-year-old quarterback right now. And that's just part of the maturation. Tom Brady, he had to go through his progression when he was younger. Russell Wilson had to do the same. Drew Brees had to do the same. This is going to come with time and with reps and in-game experience. It's going to come. But for right now, this is who Lamar is. And he'll learn. It'll come to him. And he's more willing to make those those reads and hold on to the ball a little bit more because he knows he has that leeway. Tyler Huntley doesn't have that leeway. Tyler Huntley's like, no, I need to be a robot right now. Take my three-step drop and get the ball out quickly, because he does not have the leeway that Lamar has. And we even saw that Lamar's first year. Lamar's first year, he was taking care of the ball and he was being very, very disciplined with where he needed to go with the ball. But now with that freedom, where your coaching staff and your team believes in you and they trust you to make the right plays, he can be a little bit freer than he was, say, in 2019, as far as just being able to take more shots and being more daring with some of the throws that he makes. And G-Ro's calling those plays for him because he believes in his quarterback. Now, at the time that Lamar was playing and he was getting beat up in the middle of the year, that was also the time where people lose the context of this, where the offensive line was just in shambles. It was a mess. G-Ro can't do anything about the offensive line being in shambles. He could try to, call some quick hitters. He could try to run game. But if the guys in front have no cohesion, lacking talent, lacking health, there's nothing that any offensive coordinator can do about that. And right now, we're probably seeing one of the best stretches from the offensive line. It just happens to be that Lamar isn't back there playing now.
Yep.
So I think what the fan base should take into account is what Giro has done with so little over these last 2 years. Because people forget last year was horrible as far as COVID and health. It was a complete mess. And I don't care what offensive coordinator you have. He's not going to fix that. Now, let's say if we go into 2022, everybody's healthy and the offense just isn't working, then I'm willing to look at Giro. And I'm like, hey, at first there was no weapons for Lamar. Then the offensive line has been in shambles the last 2 years. Now, if you got a talented wide receiver group, one of the best tight ends in the league, you got Lamar Jackson, and if your offensive line comes back healthy and fixed, now there's no excuses. Then you can come and attack Giro. But until that happens, I think this man has done a phenomenal job over the last 2 seasons. I don't even want to talk about 2019, but I want to talk about the last 2 seasons where they faced adversity on the roster. That has been the most impressive part, is seeing what he's been able to do with such a depleted roster over the last 2 years. And then with Wink, you guys both made a great point with Wink is, sometimes, there could be those situations like in the Bears game where you're like, you probably don't want to, send that blitz in that situation. You're going to get that. But you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Because when it works, like it did in Cleveland when Mosley picked off Baker, then it's, he's a genius. Oh, we love that aggressiveness. But then when it doesn't work, it's like, oh, man, you're too aggressive now. But I agree. I mean, no coordinator is going to be 100% perfect. And I mentioned this before we started recording, is that so many Ravens fans, they talk about Kyle Shanahan and what a great play caller he is and this and that. But then if you talk to 49er fans, they do not like how Kyle Shanahan runs his offense. They don't like it. The majority of them, they don't like it. They have a problem with him. So there's no perfect OC. There's no perfect play caller. There's going to be things you agree with, things you don't agree with. What I like to look at is, let's look at the track record. Wink's track record, pretty damn good in Baltimore. Greg Roman's track record, pretty damn good in Baltimore. I'm willing to bet on that and go into 2022 and hope that these guys can be healthy, that the guys on the roster can be healthy, so these coordinators can actually implement what they really, really want to do.
Yeah, the health is such a critical point. And I know people will say, that's making excuses. Everybody has to deal with injuries. And that's true. Everybody does. But obviously, COVID has added a whole nother level of guys not being available than kind of just your standard injuries. And you talked about the last two seasons. Even if you exclude 2019, right? 14-2, first in the office, first in the league in points, third in the league on defense in points allowed. Even 2020, 11-5. They were seventh in points on offense and second in points allowed on defense. So Wink, just looking at Wink's side, when Wink's got his guys, there ain't no problem. Okay. We're second and we're third in defense, points allowed, which to me, I mean, you can look at other stats, you can look at yards allowed, whatever. But the goal on defense is to not allow points. And if you're telling me that when guys are healthy, uh, the defensive coordinator is going to have a second or third ranked defense in terms of points allowed, I ain't got no problems. Okay. I ain't got no problem. Ain't no problem. I'm good in that situation. A whole different situation here in 2021 in terms of health and availability. The only other thing I'll say about Greg Roman, because I think we hit that thing all the way around from all different angles. Um, in terms of growth and development, you mentioned some of the guys, some of the other quarterbacks who had to go through that phase. We saw Patrick Mahomes go through earlier this year. Um, it's also, it's not just a quarterback, it's also his pass catchers. And Chuck Clark made a really interesting point about that this week when somebody asked him specifically about Mark Andrews. He said, what makes it so difficult to guard Mark Andrews? What makes him so good? And Chuck had to even laugh a little bit because, in his mind, he knows more than even we do about how true what he said was. But he said, because he can do whatever. He literally gets to do whatever, right? He said there'll be a route called and he gets to put his own little twist, his own little artistic angle on the route. And if you read between the lines with that, and particularly if you go back and you chart plays and you compare it to, kind of some of the old 49ers concepts that Giro used to run, because they're still running a ton of those, pretty much all of them, just maybe, a little different formations, motions, whatever, but the core concepts are all kind of there. If you go back and compare those plays and the tight end routes on those plays, at times Mark Andrews is doing whatever the hell he wants out there. And so you have to factor that in to your quarterback's growth and development too, because you say, okay, well, Lamar's back there holding the ball. He's waiting for something to develop downfield. Well, maybe he's expecting this man to be in a certain place and he done gone somewhere else. And you're like, wait a minute, over there. And so now you've got to figure out, okay, I got to make something shake here. I got to move. I got to extend the play because my man is out there YOLOing it. And maybe I didn't quite expect him to go that far in terms of, because I'm obviously these are things that they practice. It's not just you just going to roll out there and just straight street ball it. But I think there are times in games where it's just straight street ball. And you're just like, oh, I didn't know he was going to do that. And you just have to kind of make something happen. And the offensive line, that's the second point that I wanted to say. Because people will say, well, they don't call as much quick game stuff for Lamar as they do for Huntley. And I think that there's some truth to that. And you talked about some of the reasons possibly why, Chris. I mean, different guys, right? Different quarterbacks. Tyler's good at things. He has strengths and weaknesses just like Lamar has strengths and weaknesses. So I think you're going to call plays to maximize that individual quarterback's strengths and weaknesses. It's not a can't do situation, right? I like to use that analogy all the time about being left-handed or right-handed. I'm right-handed. But I can write with my left hand. It's not I can't write with my left hand. It just doesn't look as good. It's not as legible, but I can do it. So it's not that Lamar can't execute a quick game. It's not that Huntley can't throw the ball down the field. It's just, different strengths and different weaknesses. So where I was going with all of that in terms of the offensive line is when the offensive line is struggling, when you are having to shuffle guys in and out, some of these outlets that Lamar might have in terms of check down options, a lot of times they're helping out in pass protection. They're chipping. Maybe they're even having to stay in and they can't get out into a route. Maybe, that's the design of the play is that they're supposed to check and then, get out into a route, but they either are delayed or they're not able to get out into the route at all because of how they're needing to stay in and help. So again, what's that going to do? That's going to force you to have to hold the ball as a quarterback because you might be looking downfield initially and then realizing that that's not there. You eliminate that. So you want to look for these check downs and they're either not out yet or they don't get out at all. And so, it can make it look like, oh man, quarterback, he's just poor decision maker. He's not seeing the field clearly. Sure, I think some of that is a factor, but you have to look at all these other things. They're all a part of it. And that's what makes it such a layered conversation is because people want one answer. They want the magic bullet. Right.
Yep. And I think, I think something else that just hit me when you said that, was people are like, why is Patrick Mekari getting so much playing time over Rashad Bateman? And it's like, do you guys forget how bad the offensive line was? Like, he had to stay in to help. No Nick Boyle for most of the season. He was damn near the de facto sixth offensive line. So what do you want to do? You got an offensive line that is struggling and can't pass protect to save their lives or run block. What do you want to do? You just want to have 5 wide receiver sets? Like, is that what you want to do? But then if you do that, then you're going to complain, why do we have all these wide receivers on the field when we know that our offensive line can block? You know, so you can't have it both ways. It can't be damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. And even if you do go and spread out and you want to go 4 and 5 wide and try to get the ball out quick, because, you know, some people will say that. Some people will say, okay, well, if you're struggling with pass protection, then spread out and try to get the ball out quick. Okay, defenses are not stupid. They understand that that's what you want to do. They'll just play off. We saw Miami do that, and they basically faked a ton of pressure. They didn't actually bring as much cover zero blitz as people talked, you know, as people think. We talked about that way back when. They actually really didn't bring more than 5 or 6 on any given play. And oftentimes it was 4 or 5, not really 5 or 6, but it looked like a bunch of guys were coming and they were drop guys out. But if you looked at the depth of the corners and the safeties, they were all sitting right around the sticks, right? Regardless of the down and distance. And so they're like, yeah, you want to get the ball out quick? Cool. We'll just play back and then we'll run up and tackle you. So that all sounds great about getting the ball out quick, spreading out, whatever. Number one, they're going to have to be quick throws because we just mentioned if you spread out, now you've probably only got 5-man pass pro, right? You're not keeping a tight end or a fullback or a back end. Maybe you have 6 if you keep a back end, but you got to get the ball out quick, right? Because your offensive line has been struggling. So you don't have time for longer developing routes down the field. But if you're going to get the ball out quick, then what I just said comes into play. We'll just play off and then we'll rally and make the tackle. 3 downs, you're off the field. Boom, no problem. So what do you try to do? Well, you have to help those guys. And this is no shade to those guys, but you can look at certain games, Villanueva, or whether it was sometimes Mekari, or whether it was whoever was filling in at right tackle. You certainly saw it more with Tyree Phillips. They had to give those guys chip help on almost every obvious passing situation. Like somebody had to come over there and chip the rusher to that side before they could release on a route. And a lot of times that was Patrick Mekari, because are you going to have James Prochet and those guys do that kind of thing 10, 15 times a game? It's not that they're not willing to, but that ain't the body type to be going in there
killed
and chipping Trey Hendrickson and TJ Watt. This is not the body. I mean, can they do it? Yeah, we've seen Tyler. We know Tyler can do it. We know those guys can do it. But, you know, those guys get paid to catch the ball. And so you probably don't want to ask them to do that 10 or 15 times a game. So you have a guy like Mekari who really is more built to do that. And you say, well, he shouldn't be on the field as much. Okay, fine. Take him off the field, but then understand the constraint that you're putting yourself in. Yeah, you can spread out. Yeah, you can throw the ball, but it's going to be what we've seen, right? I might have just answered my own question when I asked it earlier. Why you see so much more quick game now? That might just be it. Because in the passing game, that's all we can protect for. We can't protect long enough to get the ball down. And so that's why you're seeing so much quick game. It's at least a factor. I'm not, because again, I don't believe in these one magic bullet answers. There's usually multiple answers, but I think that's at least one factor for why you're seeing more of that. Quarterback play, receiver play, offensive line, all of it, right? All of it is factors. So I think we're all in agreement that sometimes this stuff gets a little overblown and things tend to get magnified even more when you're losing, right? These issues can all be floating around a little bit just under the surface. When you're winning games, you can kind of mask it a little bit. And then when you're losing, and particularly when you're losing consecutive games, it all kind of gets pushed to the surface and boils up and boils over. And it becomes the dominant narrative. It's gone from these little side issues. Maybe it's a little bit of this, maybe it's a little bit of that, to now, this is it. This is what it is. This is why this is happening. So that's what happens when you lose games.
And what it is, Mike, is, we are an impatient society, just generally anyway. And that's not different for football fans. But, we can sit and talk about all these different things and issues and stuff like that. And I just keep coming back to it, man. Maybe all the Ravens just need is time, health, third and long so is a lot harder to get to when you got J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in that backfield. That's how you stay out of third and long, is having those guys and having a Ronnie Stanley as your bookend at left tackle. So some of these things will be healed, with time and health. You got a team that has a aggressive, creative GM. He's got a boatload of picks, and you can use those picks in a multitude of different ways. I know this isn't something that people want to hear because they want it right now. They want all the answers. They want everything fixed right this second. But sometimes, man, you just got to look at it and say, hey, we can do it. We'll do the best we can do with what we got. But, sometimes you kind of got to wait. Not saying they're waving the white flag, but as far as the complete upside of this team, this is more of a 2022 thing. And, you get some of these guys back and then see what we have and then make more of an accurate assessment and judgment on what the coordinators are doing, when they have a kind of full deck to work with.
Yeah, hey, this is a truism on offense and defense, but you'll hear people say that the best third down offense or defense is a first down offense or defense. And so it was a lot different story when you could line up on first down and turn around and hand the ball off to those guys you just mentioned and pick up 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10-yard chunks on first down. And I mean, they're scoring at almost a full touchdown less per game than they were last year. They were just about 29.3, 29.4 points per game last year. And this year they're down to 23.7, something like that. So it's almost a full touchdown less per game. And when you think about the things that they're missing and the issues on the offensive line, I mean, it kind of makes sense. You can say, hey, the wide receiving core is probably a little more fortified than it was last year. And that's true. But we all know that without pass protection and without a running game, as much as people want to say running backs don't matter, without pass protection and without a running game, unless you've got one of those unicorn type quarterbacks, and even those guys, can't carry an offense for 16, 17 games. They're going to have games where they have down games. As much as as great as Patrick Mahomes was, I talked about him. He had his little stretch earlier in the season that, they were struggling. As great as he is a unicorn type guy. Lamar is a unicorn type guy. But, it's a team game for a reason. As great as one individual player can be and as much as they can do, they still cannot do everything. And there's a tipping point where if they got a certain, enough level of talent around them, okay, maybe they can kind of keep it all the balls in the air, juggling all the balls. But once you go beyond that tipping point, it doesn't matter who you are. It gets hard to keep all the balls in the air. So, yeah.
And Mike, couple things. Trevor Lawrence has one touchdown pass since Halloween. Matt Rule just compared himself to Jay-Z and said it could take 7 years. Count your blessings, Ravens fans. It could be a whole lot worse.
A whole lot worse.
I mean, he's going to be there for 7 years. He got another. I mean, I don't know what his contract is. Maybe he got a Gruden contract. I don't know. I don't foresee Shad Khan or any NFL owner kind of waiting that long. That's for sure. So yeah, this is one of those things, man. We've been so spoiled here over these last 2 years, and really even the second half of 2018, because that was damn magic too. I mean, that team was going nowhere at the time that Joe got hurt. So it really has been magical. And when the rug is kind of pulled from underneath you a little bit, then it's easy to start complaining and start pointing fingers. And that's the other thing that happens when you lose. Terrell Suggs used to say that all the time. Winning has many fathers, but losing is an orphan. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Nobody wants to look at themselves. Not the team. I think the team does a masterful job of that. All those guys always look at themselves and say, hey, it's about what I can do. It ain't about what nobody else to the left of me or to the right of me. It's about what I can do to help the team win. But the fan base, we have a tendency to want to start pointing fingers. It's this guy's fault. It's this coach's fault. It's this, it's that. Because we want them to win. So I get it. I'm not trying to be down on any fan who does that. Obviously, if you're a fan, you want the team to win, and that's where that's coming from. Because you've seen it. You know what they're capable of. But you also have to be realistic in that and know that this is not, that iteration. of the team. When you're talking about, I know how good they are, I know what they can do. This ain't them. This is a different this is a different iteration of that team, and they have to find their own path, and they have been. They've been trying. So 2 games left. I always have to remind myself of that because the season, it goes by fast. I can remember when we were back in training camp and we were excited about the potential for this season because of what we thought was going to be available. This was the year. We were like, all right, we are loaded for bear, baby. Here we go. And, that rug can get pulled up out of you quick. That's life. That's not just NFL. That's life in general. It's one of my favorite songs. The stakes is high. Life can get all up in your ass, baby. You better work for that. That is the truth. So, I think we've touched on everything. We can probably go ahead and land this thing, unless either one of you guys want to hit on anything else before we get out of here.
I'm good.
I think we hit everything.
Okay. Anybody want to check that out? De La Soul, Stakes is High, going back in the day. As I told my man Chris, anything that has happened after the mid-2000s musically, I am totally unaware of it. But before that, I'm your guy. We got that up all day, every day. So yeah, check that out if you're into that. But as always, we appreciate everybody for tapping in with us. We know we got a loyal group of listeners, of viewers out there, and we appreciate y'all. Another year, man. It's hard to believe we've been doing this for 4 years, 3 years, 4 years. I should know, but I don't. I think it's been at least 3, maybe 4.
I think 3.
I think 3. Yeah.
2018?
2019.
We didn't start in 2018?
No,
I think we started 2019.
Damn. See, don't ask the oldest guy in the room. Anyway, it was a long-winded way of just wanting to thank everybody who's been with us during this journey and is still with us. And any new listeners and new viewers, hey, welcome aboard. And we're happy to have you here. So always, please like, subscribe, download, share out there on all the different socials, because we want to continue to grow this thing. We want to continue to reach out to the people that we know want to hear this kind of content. We know who you are, and you know who we are. So we want to connect with those people. So everybody who listens is already in that group, and they know the same thing. So, when y'all like, share, subscribe, that helps us reach out to those other people and connect with them and bring them into the fold. So I'm just thankful for these 2 guys, Carey and Chris, always, helping me to be a better person. Forget all the football Raven stuff, but just to try to become a better man, a better father, better husband, the stuff that really matters, the real stuff. So I thank you, both of you guys. We're recording here on New Year's Eve earlier in the day. So, we can ready to roll into the deuce, about to get loose in the deuce. So I just want to thank everybody for another year. Just, man, I'm just thankful. I'm grateful to see another year and my family, everybody to be healthy. Because it's been rough 2 years. We all know that. With what's been going on in the world. And now they talk about some damn flu Rona. It makes sense. What is a flu Rona? Are they combining words at this point?
Keep your doors locked, people. Keep your doors locked.
Stay inside. Stay inside. Somebody tweeted today, like, look, even if you don't know, just assume that you got COVID and stay your ass in the house. Come outside. Don't do that. Anyway, what a way to end the show. Hey, thanks everybody. Get out of here. Y'all be good, and we'll catch you next time. Stay.
These my dads make it hurt.